Hello everybody and welcome to World of Warships live release version. You can look at the Kuma, the Tier 4 Japanese cruiser, a light cruiser by design. If you look around you can see we're in a much nicer port than I will usually have up, and this is something that came in as a bonus from a community code that was actually on Reddit of all places rather than the main wargaming forums. You can just look around here. And it came with this thing, the Aurora, which is a Tier 3 protected cruiser premium ship, Russian. And I'm just keeping this thing for the moment. I'm going to use the report slot for something else. I don't really have a lot of interest or use for a Russian premium ship, particularly at a Tier 3 protected cruiser. I already have a St. Louis over there. But this came in free, about 2,200 gold value plus the slot. And I'll be selling that. Marblehead also was courtesy of another wargaming contest, so we're starting to get the free port slots that wargaming is known for here. Marblehead, again, is another premium cruiser ship. I'm not going to keep this either. I don't need another American premium ship. I have the Arkansas Beta. I'm just using it to run up some stuff right now. Here is my little low-tier clubbing cruiser, the St. Louis, because it's a St. Louis. I love the St. Louis. Now we're going to go back to the point of this video, which is the Kuma. And so you see, this is a different type of cruiser than the St. Louis or the Marblehead or a lot of the bigger American cruisers. And it looks a lot like a destroyer, and it actually kind of is. The Kuma is designed as what was known as a destroyer leader. It's basically it's a big destroyer speed ship that has enough firepower to put other destroyers in their place, but can still do destroyer functions and can be a kind of a command ship. So you can see it has a nice centerline gun arrangement with effectively can achieve 6 guns on either side with offset ones on the conning tower there, and everything else can fire to either side. So very, very good design in that regard. And you see you have a plane on there that's actually a intercept fighter plane, which you can use to as an anti-aircraft escort, which mostly has the effect of disrupting torpedo spreads. Look over here, your survivability. This has very little armor, 13 to 65 millimeters. We've put armor stat back in the game now, by the way, so you can start to get a rough sense of how much armor these ships have. Looking at the artillery, 7 140 millimeter guns. This benefits from light cruiser talents in the talent tree. I'll talk a little bit more about that and later, why that's important. So the guns are okay. They're what the ship is designed for. The ship is designed to do picket duty against other destroyers, and like I said, put them in their place, keep them like cruisers away from the rest of the fleet, dominate them for your destroyers. Now look at the maneuverability, and you see something right away. It's got 35. It has maneuverability that is up to 35 knots and roughly a 7-second rudder shift time. Here we go, 34.2 knots on the Izakazi, 34.7 on the Kuma, 5.4 second rudder shift, excuse me. Bigger turning circle, longer ship. And now we see the torpedoes, and it has a 4x2 arrangement. It can fire 4 torpedoes on each side, 8 total. And these are pretty powerful torpedoes. They're not the World War II Japanese long-lance torpedoes Type 93 that the Japanese mounted on absolutely everything in historical World War II, but they serve a fairly similar purpose. These are ship killers. And the point of the Japanese cruiser doctrine in that regard is you have torpedoes on your cruiser that you can use to equalize an enemy capital ship advantage, i.e. the Americans. And because you hit, as you discovered like in World of Warships, if you hit a battleship with a few torpedoes, well, it doesn't matter that he was a bigger battleship now, does it? He's mostly out of the game, if not dead entirely. And you can see these are extremely... We're going over the Izakazi. It actually has only 6 torpedoes. They're centerline mounted. This has 8, but split 4-4, so you have to do a turnaround to execute the full attack. They're not as fast as the Izakazi. So the Izakazi has slightly better torpedoes in damage and speed and everything. But in terms of, is it a serviceable ship attacker? Yes, it absolutely is. The Izakazi and Minakazi are particularly good ship attacker destroyers, probably the best destroyers in the game for their tier. And For a cruiser, this is the Japanese cruiser habit. They all have these torpedoes, and it's all derived from that previously mentioned Japanese cruiser ship killer doctrine. Now we're going to go over and look at the tech tree here. And you see the Kuma is at a tier 4, directly below the tier 3 Tenryu, and the Kuma is just a slightly improved Tenryu. And the text even says as much. This is just a relatively evolutionary upgrade, which is fine. The Tenryu is a very good ship. Weak anti-aircraft defense, typical for early period Japanese cruisers. Yeah, this is not an anti-aircraft boat. And the Japanese in tier 5 then switch to having heavy cruisers, but they still keep the general doctrine of having torpedoes. And ultimately you come to this thing, which is where I'm going on the Japanese cruiser line eventually, and that is the tier 8 Mogami, which is kind of the pinnacle of what a Japanese cruiser should be. And I see no reason to play the 9 or the 10. And it's, if you look at it, it's not only a heavy cruiser, but it was designed originally for 155mm armament, and later for upgrades to 203mm if it became necessary to have more heavy cruisers because you were ignoring the naval treaties. But so this is very similar to the Kuma. If you look at that, rudder shift time's a little longer, speed's comparable. It just has a lot more torpedoes and slightly bigger guns, 155s, but those are still light cruiser guns in the game thinking. So my Kuma captain is going to eventually be driving this sucker, and we'll be having a good old time of that, because all of his tech skills for lighter ships apply to it. In terms of the Kuma's research itself, it basically doesn't have any. You have a very minor hull upgrade here from A to B. You can look at how small the hits are by going back down to the stock hull. You don't have to do anything with your torpedoes. You don't have to do anything with your guns. You don't have to modify your engines. You can modify your fire control, but that's not really super important because this is not a super long-range shooting ship, because you're mostly going to be shooting at destroyers. You don't want to get into long-range gun battles with enemy ships that fire armor-piercing ammunition, because you're not going to last very long. You're basically a huge floating citadel between that forward tripod mast and the float plane. In terms of equipment, I'm not running equipment on this at the moment, but you would definitely get the torpedo tube modification 1, so you don't have your torpedoes shot out when you're doing an attack, and you can kind of pick your poison with this set of modifications, because you're going to take damage to your propulsion, your steering gears, and you will have a chance of getting set on fire. So the Kuma is not a very durable ship, so pick whatever you like there. Essentially, they're all going to be moderately helpful. I usually take damage control 1 on battleships, but haven't really decided what I would mount on this thing for basically what irritates me the more about what gets shot off. And you can see the hull upgrade mostly just makes the ship look like World War II, a more World War II-ish ship. Adds hydroacoustic search, which can sniff out destroyers and smoke screens, and a catapult fighter, which, as mentioned, is good for disrupting enemy torpedo runs against your fellow ships. And then you have 19,000 XP to grind to the Furutaka. Captain skills here, as mentioned, broad variety cruiser skills, secondary armor, ammo switching, turret rotation, and torpedo boost. Because as a Japanese cruiser, your torpedoes are if not your primary weapon, then definitely tied up there as a weapon. Sixth Sense, definitely have it on these, because you're going to want to know if you're detected by a destroyer, and you're going to want to know if there's an enemy capital ship left, if he sees you or he doesn't, because that's very important as well. Expert loader, people get down on this on battleships, but for a cruiser, it's excellent. And so yeah, that is the Kuma. And now we're going to go play a game with the Kuma, and this game came out very, very well, and I like it because it shows you exactly what you're going to try to do with the Kuma. And that's the Kuma has a 2-phase engagement route. As you can see here, we're in Tier 3, Tier 4 game. The enemy has Miyogi, South Carolina class battleships, other cruisers, and a whole heck of a lot of destroyers. So this will be torpedo spam. It's a broadly equivalent match. Nice fair fight. So in a match like this with the Kuma, which is right in your wheelhouse, you have two objectives. One is to screen off the big units of your fleet from early and ambush-style destroyer attacks. you can't really do anything about your battleships driving into 7-kilometer lob torpedoes, but you can try to prevent the much more likely to kill you, devastating swing-in suicide attacks and island sniping. Because you're as fast as a destroyer, you have enough guns to wreck a destroyer. They do quite a bit of damage with high explosive ammunition to destroyers. And so you will typically run along with your destroyers and screen to keep the enemy ships at bay and let them know that they're engaged and they're not sneaking up on you. And even just usually taking shots at them can be enough to disrupt their initial early attacks. Playing on New Dawn, and New Dawn, as you have gathered, is from watching any videos of this game, New Dawn is basically just destroyer heaven, because you have all these islands you can dodge around. It's a large map, it lets you maneuver, but it's not so large that your torpedoes have no chance of hitting a damn thing. And we're moving out here with the other, with the 4 destroyers, 3 in front of me, 1 behind. We have a 5th one who's taking a little time loading into the game. He's back behind the island. You can take speculative shots in this thing because you do have pretty long-range torpedoes. But the thing with speculative shots, and you see this again and again and again, is you have to make sure that your own ships cannot get into the speculative track, because torpedoes, there is no such thing as a friendly torpedo. So now we're cruising in, and we've made destroyers trying to make contact with their cruiser, and that means that the destroyers will be up in here somewhere. And so I'm a picket ship, I'm detected, I'm just going to start firing here. And again, try to disrupt the initial early attack, see if I can get some free hits using high explosive ammunition, because I'm primarily worried about destroyers and I want to be able to knock them down. I wasn't able to loft them over the edge there, but I did get an incapacitate hit. And now you see the first cruiser, and I can't quite get them over that little mountain edge, but that's not really important. Ammo is dirt cheap. Now, here we go, rival Tenryu type cruiser. That's American, not a Tenryu Phoenix class. Very similar in appearance and similar in function, really. They have those American cruisers, Tier 4, Tier 5, have torpedoes. You need to keep that in mind. They're not solely the gun cruisers, which becomes the American country flavor, national flavor, if you will, that they become all guns and all anti-aircraft suites. At this point, they're still using light cruiser torpedo type doctrine, the Phoenix and the Omaha. So there's the enemy capital ship line, and I'm already thinking, okay, how do I get out there? Because that's the second stage of playing one of these things. If you survive the initial skirmish bouts and keep destroyers under control and basically clean up that reasonably well, population control, breakup patterns, you have torpedoes, and you are here for taking out enemy capital ships. Kuma that doesn't try to take out enemy capital ships is a complete waste of space. You are not going to... You're only here for your guns to the extent that they mess up destroyers. And I'm firing at him at 10 kilometers there. And I hit him. And see, they do a high explosive 792, and destroyers do not have that much health, so they don't want to be under that for any real length of time. I'm not actually in smoke at the moment. I'm seeing his smoke, but the Kuma itself is small enough and fast enough to dance through destroyer smoke screens quite nicely. And I've damaged him pretty good. And I was thinking of shooting at him, but the destroyers took care of him. That's not where you want to be as a light cruiser. But he's gone now. And that destroyer that I've damaged was not able to get away from our torpedo spread. So the picket exchange here has gone pretty well. We have one breakthrough on the other side of the map that's going after a battleship, and I can't really do anything about that. I can't be everywhere at once. But other than that, we're doing okay. And so now I'm going to come in, I'm going to go earn my keep. I'm going to go do as many torpedo runs on the enemy heavy cruisers and battleships as I possibly can, because that's what I'm here to do. And the Kuma can definitely punch way out of its weight class here because of those torpedoes. It has 4 on a side, and that means if it turns around and manages to do a double loop attack, which you should keep in mind if you're ever fighting a Kuma in a larger ship, that if he's turning around, he still has another set of torpedoes. And that's just like with the Mogami that I'm also going to be driving with this captain. It has 2 launchers on a side. It does not have just the 2 sets you see. And so now I'm using the islands here to come in and get a little bit closer. I can't be killed quite as quickly as a destroyer, but I don't want to get hit too much because again, I'm a giant floating citadel, and armor-piercing ammunition anywhere in my middle of my ship will do a heck of a lot of damage and can kill me in a salvo or 2. Fortunately, the enemy mostly has Mayogis, which I'm keeping in mind are not very likely to be able to land on a lot of shells that, unless they get multiple citadel hits, they're not likely to be able to take me out in one salvo. They just don't have enough tubes. So now we have a St. Louis, who has been thoroughly outflanked by me by using this island here. We're at 6.5 kilometers, no 6.4. He still doesn't quite actually see me. I'm going to try to take some shots at the destroyer while I'm still moving in for better positioning on the St. Louis, because I want to get rid of I still want to get rid of the destroyers, because they can... A destroyer that you leave floating around, by the way, is just asking for trouble. Like, I get so frustrated as a battleship captain when our cruisers will leave badly damaged but still entirely alive destroyers floating there, because a destroyer with 200 hit points can still launch an entire spread of torpedoes. It's just like World of Tanks. You don't leave moderate health, somewhat damaged ships alive. And he fired torpedoes at me there, but I have the island. And now I've got a close run, 3 kilometers on the St. Louis. And yeah, you're in trouble if you're a St. Louis right now, because St. Louis does not have the agility to dodge, and he's not even going to really see these right away. He's also firing salvos instead of ripple fire for some reason, so he maybe needs to learn how to St. Louis. But he's got bigger concerns at the moment because those torpedoes, boom, yeah, there we go. 1 hit, nice midships, he's flooding, he's burning. He hasn't actually extinguished the fires, that means he hasn't tried to fix the flooding. He must not have his repair crew up or know what to do with it. And clipping a little bit there on the replay, but he's going to die. There we go. Okay, so I've got about half my health left, and I was expecting I was going to take damage there, but 1 enemy down. And now I see what I really want. I want a battle cruiser. There's a Ryogi. And I'm going to fire some harassing fire here at him, not because I'm expecting to accomplish a heck of a lot, but because I want to get him to use his repair kit before I do a full torpedo run on him. And we got our torpedoes coming in there. And yeah, I spread that out pretty well, and so he's going to take 2. And that's going to do a heck of a lot of damage to him. Oh yeah. He is burning, he is barely floating, he is trash. And so that damage is done now. And now I see I've got 2,500 hit points left, but I've wrecked 2 capital ships, so good so far. And now I'm going to do the destroyer thing and go fire long-range speculative stuff at this South Carolina. And I'm not really expecting to survive this, and I don't. But you see I have 65 hits in the process here. And those torpedoes are still on the way, and he doesn't realize that the Kuma fired torpedoes at him. He's just still steaming, and still steaming, and still steaming, and he's never going to see them. And so all of a sudden, boom, and boom, and there's a high caliber. And that is how you Kuma.